Inflation occurs when goods and services such as fuel, housing, food, transportation, and apparel all rise in cost in the overall economy. Inflation can have a negative impact on an economy and society if prices of these goods and services rise significantly or too quickly. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reese. In today's video, I am talking about what inflation is and the general basics of how it works. The main concern regarding inflation is that it can make your money saved today in your bank account worth less tomorrow. In more complex terms, inflation degrades consumers' purchasing power and can interfere with people's ability to retire. As a simple example, if an investor were to make 5% on their portfolio within a year, that would be pretty good. 5% isn't terrible. But imagine if inflation was 3%. In real terms, that investor only actually made 2%, which isn't really a great profit or increase in value of their portfolio. The most common way that inflation is measured is through CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and it's the way that the government tries to control or tame inflation. They do it by adjusting loans in accordance with CPI, essentially putting you out of pocket because they increase the loan to match it. A good example of this is your HEX debt. Each year, the total balance is adjusted for CPI, ultimately resulting in you having a sum added to your loan. If you want some more information about the HEX debt and how CPI works regarding your help and student loan, I've left a link in the description below to that video. The government also reduced the money supply within the economy by decreasing bond prices and increasing interest rates, ultimately resulting in companies having to reduce their prices, which in turn is supposed to slow the rate of inflation. Another good example is the housing market. It's something that has seen its ups and downs forever. So think of it like this. If houses are in demand because our economy is seeing an expansion, house prices will go up. The demand for these houses will also drive the price up for the ancillary products and services that are concerned with the housing market, such as construction products might see an increase in demand, ultimately driving their prices up too. This is inflation, everything rising to a point where your money can no longer buy that for what is deemed a suitable price. So now with the understanding in place, who actually benefits from inflation? Unfortunately, consumers are the people who experience little benefits from the byproduct of inflation, whereas investors can potentially experience a boost to their portfolios. If they basically hold assets in areas or markets where inflation is occurring, they can potentially see a profit as their portfolios will see a rise as inflation and demand goes up too. Just as a simple example, if energy prices are rising, people who have stock or shares in energy companies might see a rise in their stock prices too. Some companies can also reap the rewards of inflation, where if they produce a product that is high in demand, they can charge more for that product, ultimately resulting in their profit margins being higher. This goes the same for companies whose product is a service where they may be able to charge more to do the job. So in summary, inflation can provide companies with pricing power and allow them to increase their profit margins potentially significantly. Business owners may also deliberately withhold supplies from the market, allowing prices to rise to a favorable level. However, depending on if it costs them more to make these products now that they are in such high demand, it can also be detrimental to the company too. That's why inflation can be dangerous, because it can both be positive for some, but it's generally negative for all. Because at the end of the day, it will put companies into a risk category if they are unable to continue to produce this product at the higher running cost. This is where foreign competition may come into play. Let's use China as an example, where they may come into play and be able to do the job for cheaper, essentially ruining companies which are local and within the actual country itself, ultimately offshoring all the work to said other countries who can do it for cheaper. Those other countries may also not be affected by inflation that we may be experiencing, basically giving them an edge in competition. This type of scenario will ultimately see local companies losing customers and essentially, let's say, getting to the point of having to close down, where the prices from those competing companies overseas may then begin to raise their prices, ultimately again being a negative side effect on the consumer, because now we have to pay more for someone overseas to ship the product here that we could have been buying local for a cheaper price originally. So key takeaways is number one, inflation is the measure of the rate of rising prices for goods and services within the economy. Number two, inflation can occur when the cost for things like raw materials or wages go up, causing the products themselves to go up, ultimately falling into a chain reaction of increased prices for goods and services. And number three, there is a small cluster of companies who will reap the rewards from inflation, but ultimately it's going to have a somewhat negative impact on society as a whole. Overall, inflation is something that may present or create an opportunity for you, let's say an investor. As the prices for goods and services go up, you may be able to capitalize on specific fields or sectors which are seeing a rise in increase for their products. I hope you learned something in today's video. I hope that it was insightful. If it was and you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. And as always, I will see you in the next one.